Chris has worked in the energy industry for more than 30 years with national nonprofit advocacy organizations, corporations, contractors, and federal agencies. She currently leads Renewables Forward, a national nonprofit collaborative of industry leaders who are committed to driving action for diversity, equity, and inclusion within the clean energy industry. She led national research to support increased access to community solar for low-income communities with groundswell, and created numerous workforce programs during her service at the Department of Energy. And with that, Chris, I'm going to pass it to you to lead this amazing panel.
Thank you, Ariel, and thank you. Hey, let's give it up for the panel. Okay, I want, this is an interactive session. You didn't know this, but I'm going to surprise you. So your interaction, how many of you would have killed for a cup of coffee on the break? Yeah, baby. We're talking East Coast brain on West Coast time. But we're gonna liven it up because this panel is a spark plug worth of, an energy storage megawatt right here sitting right on the stage. So I want to introduce my panel just by name and title, and they will further introduce themselves and give you a little background on their own history and what they're going to speak to today. We could easily fill the day. We could fill a week talking about how to actually deliver benefit to the neighbors, the family members, our communities who we most want to serve with the incredible asset of clean solar generation through community solar. We could fill that week, but we're only going to take the next 40 minutes. So we're going to keep it tight. I want to allow time for questions, but our focus is, given the new resources, given some legacy resources, given the incredible energy of this panel and the organizations they represent and everyone in the room, how can we collectively ensure that the people we most want to benefit, the people who most need the benefit, the families and neighbors that we care about, really get the benefit from community solar? So that said, I want to start off just sharing names. Yesenia Rivera, Executive Director for Energy Allies. And she's going to tell us a little bit about a particular project in Boston and maybe some Buffalo, maybe. Mpofu, Director of Energy Equity for Solar United Neighbors. And a little hats off to Anya Schoolman, who we wish was here today. And so I was going to give her a little bit of a thank you and talk about Sun's effort at residential benefit and where there may be some gaps that we should fill. Jennifer Schmidt, Manager for the Solar for All program through the Illinois Power Agency, and the advances and progress Illinois has been able to achieve and what they would like to do in the future as well. And last but not least, Charlie Harak, Senior Attorney with Energy and Utilities with National Consumer Law Center. Lots of good information about the current regulations, legislation, situations in different states and on the ground, federal limits and constraints, federal state opportunities, and what we need to look for to make sure we hit the mark in delivering benefits. So let's kick it off. If each of you could take just a couple minutes, minute and a half, 2 minutes, and share your particular situation, and then we'll run to questions, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Sure, yes, I'll start. Yesenia Rivera, as Chris mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of Energy Allies, though most of you already know us as Solstice Initiative. We recently rebranded a few weeks ago. So I'm here representing our community-led community solar options. We're trying to revolutionize the energy system by centering climate impacted communities through clean energy projects, policy advocacy, and education. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our Boston and Buffalo community-led solutions.
Thank you.
Greetings all. I'm so happy to be here. Again, my name is Mpofu, and I'm the Director of Energy Equity for Solar United Neighbors. I have the pleasure to be able to be on this panel today on behalf of our Executive Director, and as many of you probably have heard of her, just being a major drum leader for the energy equity and specifically the rooftop solar movement. So in my comments today, I want to be able to impart with you the work that we're doing that's so exciting. We are in what we call 3 regions. That includes 12 states and also Puerto Rico. And so we're really proud to be able to have a territory because that is an important part of deploying equitable energy solutions. I'll also be talking about some of the opportunities and some of the demonstrations of the ways in which we are really working to do narrative shift. You'll recall in the prior panel that there was some talk about how do we change and claim the story of what an energy future and that is inclusive looks like. And so I hope that you'll be able to retain some of our approaches and how, I think we're all here to be a part of that. So thank you.
Jennifer Schmidt. I work for the Illinois Power Agency, which is an independent state agency. And we run the solar incentive programs for Illinois, Illinois Solar for All, which is our income eligible program, and Illinois Shines, which is our market rate program. My background, I've been at the IPA for 4 years, and before that I was 13 years at Community Action. So my focus has been very much on I appreciate the reduction of the energy burden and focusing on the customers that we're serving, reducing those energy burdens, and then making connections at the community level and with the programs that not only spread the word about the program, but also engage folks for for stakeholder engagement, and that helps shape the program.
Hi, I'm Charlie Harak. I'm a senior attorney at the National Consumer Law Center, and I just want to give you a brief overview why an attorney at the National Consumer Law Center is interested in participating on the community solar subscription tool. At NCLC, we often work at this intersection of supporting well-funded low-income energy efficiency and renewable programs, but always wanting to make sure that energy is affordable and however it's offered free of risk to consumers. So we're thrilled that DOE has been launching this tool. It will certainly help bring low-income people into the solar market much better. A lot of low-income people, of course, don't even have roofs, or if they have a roof, it might need to be replaced tomorrow or maybe even today. And so this is good, obviously, for all the tenants, but for the many homeowners who have a tree over it or all the other problems they have. And also, a community solar means they don't have to have access to capital to directly participate in putting solar on the roof. So we're really grateful to the 5 partners I'll name: HHS, DOE, the whole alphabet soup, NREL, NASIO, and NIETA. They deserve our collective thanks. I want to thank all those agencies for the good work. Our particular role is really to come up with a list of program design questions and concerns to make sure that this is a great experience for the consumers and that there aren't any risks for them, and let's avoid any of those risks if possible. And if I can do a quick thanks for the tech team, you guys have been doing a great job.
Woo, tech team. All right, Charlie, I want to feed off something Charlie said. When we're talking about all the new resources that very exciting, Inflation Reduction Act, CHIP, grid, bill, all these federal innovations that bring huge amounts of resources for climate mitigation, for human services, for clean energy advances. Amazing. And I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. I'm so grateful. Well, there are some legacy programs we're also going to speak to today on this panel. The LIHEAP, for instance, which is administered not by DOE, but by HHS. And a partner we were not able to bring today, Akim Rahman, who is the head of that program at HHS, wants to send his greetings to all of us and also say, make sure you tell them all about LIHEAP and what we're doing now. So we will work that in as we can. Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, LIHEAP. It's been around for 38 years?
No, since the late 60s.
Yeah, oh, so, old. It's old. So, but I also want to say LIHEAP, as wonderful as it was in concept, when it was created in the 60s, it was much more beneficial than it is today. It's actually, it's great. It's all state administered. So it's a big fund from the feds that's given to the state energy offices and then flow down to the CAP agencies. States determine how it is spent. So an income eligible family may receive a couple $100 to pay an energy bill under the old system. Now, with the innovation with DOE and HHS partnering, some of that LIHEAP money may be allowed to support solar rooftop or solar community subscription. But remember, LIHEAP is not a big chunk of money, or it wasn't a big chunk of money. And previously, maybe 10 to 17% of all eligible families in a given state might receive some LIHEAP money in a given year, 10 to 17%. So it wasn't generous, but it helped the neediest families. And we're going to see that expand. And as we say, teach someone to fish instead of handing them the fish. This is the intent, to give them a more permanent solution. Let's jump to solutions that work and how this panel and the answers and the programs we all support actually do deliver some benefit, or sometimes a lot of benefit, to the families we want to see served. And Yesenia, I wanted to go to your projects first in Boston and maybe Buffalo, and say, how has Energy Allies, Solstice Energy Allies, been able to develop a project that does see the end user benefit?
By centering community. We start with a community needs assessment and really trying to understand where the community is, what are their needs. So if we're the ones that can answer those needs and we are the ones that can assist them, then we can partner and move forward. And if it's not us that they need, who can we bring in to help those communities? And that's what we're doing in Boston. We're working in Rochester, Roxbury, Mattapan, and Dorchester. And we are trying to, again, center the community. That's why we changed our name to Energy Allies. We're there to take our cues from them. And we've been meeting with the Community Advisory Board for over a year and a half now, meeting regularly. And we started with that community needs assessment to see where they are and tailor our education and our offerings based on that assessment. We've been working with the Community Advisory Board, which is made out of residents as well as smaller organizations that work in the community, such as Crew and Bikes Not Bombs and other smaller nonprofits that work in that area. And they've decided they wanted to own the system. We talked about community solar, we talked about energy, talked about the benefits and how do you develop community solar. And after those discussions, they said, we want to own our system. We want the benefits now. We want them to stay in the community. And this was pre-IRA. You can imagine when they said, we want to own the system, we're like, okay, how are we going to finance this?
Yeah.
Without an equity investor, without a tax equity flip, then thankfully the IRS was passed into law. Now we have that direct pay option as a nonprofit. So they were extremely excited when they heard the IRA had passed and there was a 30% direct pay option. So they immediately started talking to legal counsel. How do we incorporate? What do we need to do in order for these benefits to stay inside the community? And I think that's the bulk of our approach, is like, have the communities that have been excluded from these conversations, that have been excluded from a clean energy transition, be the ones making the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And that for us is key, is why we have a community advisory board, in recognizing the time and effort that they're putting into this board. Because we, like I said, we've been meeting regularly for a year and a half. We made the commitment to fundraise so that we can actually pay them for being part of these CAB meetings.
Right.
Is, we have to recognize that they're putting some of their time, they're taking off their day, of their busy days, to be part of these conversations. And they're looking at everything, not just how do we reduce our bill through a community solar project, but how do we make sure that we build this project in a way and in a place that can benefit the entire community. So we're doing that through a database approach. We're using a GIS method to look at the energy burdens, to look at the community itself, and find sites that just by building it, we're bringing in infrastructure, we're bringing in other benefits other than just lowering their bills. They have a workforce development committee as part of that CAB that's really focused on how do we bring more than just cutting your bills? How do we bring in more benefits to the community? And we're taking some of those lessons and doing the same in Buffalo. So we're starting with that community needs assessment to truly understand where the community is. We're looking at that database approach with that GIS data and trying to identify sites for possible community solar siting. And we're looking at paying that CAB again, because it's important to value the community's time and really show them that we respect them and we're partners.
This is a first principle. I should ask, how many of us here have, I'll make it easy, either solar on your roof or a subscription to a community solar project? All right. So if you are a subscriber, then you know you had to go through a few things to sign up for that subscription. And there's best principles behind that. But one of the best principles is if you're the developer and created that program, you were paid to design the program and bring it to fruition. And if the community members are designing their program, they need some compensation as well. So this is a good idea. Charlie, I'm going to jump to you if you're good with this and say, what are some of the other good principles behind program design that make community solar deliver the better benefit, the more optimized maximum benefit to the end user?
Well, I'll suggest one that I think is useful. So a lot of programs are going to wind up being first come and first serve. And in Massachusetts, there's a model not yet formally approved by our commission, but certainly developed by a utility that let's figure out how many dollars of benefit can we get if we put out an RFP and get bids. How many people can we serve at a meaningful level? And we're thinking at least $300 to $400 a year. And how do you distribute that benefit? And so we're trying to make sure, so Massachusetts has 40 defined environmental justice communities out of about 365 cities and towns. They're going to have a priority. If you have an arrearage larger than a certain amount, they're going to have a priority. So we're going to consciously deliver these important benefits in a way that we're going to make sure we hit some equity targets. Another thing is kind of more of a protection is just to make sure, yes, that those benefits are substantial and actually delivered. I'd focus on those among them. Yeah, I think those are the ones I would really flag. I guess one other issue I would flag is to have materials that explain it really simply for the people it's going to be pitched to. We have worked with some mission-oriented nonprofit developers in Massachusetts, and at first they put out contracts that even we as lawyers were having a hard time understanding, and you can't imagine the number of questions we had from households. So we've heard on other panels this whole issue, how do you get the message out? Well, it better be a pretty simple message so a low-income person's going to think, I want to partake in this thing, I understand it. So I think I'd flag those. There's some others, but I'd start with those.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say low-income people could understand. I say people who live in the world can understand it. I used to have the mother-in-law standard, where if I couldn't explain some arcane energy technology to my mother-in-law, it wasn't explainable. I just had to go back and work until Betty got it. And when Betty got it, it was like, no, that's the elevator speech right there. So, because that's love. It's like being compassionate so the people you work with understand what they're getting, why, when the benefit, will I see the benefit? Do I measure them? Do I control the benefit?
So I just want to underscore that community solar can be an important equity tool, and we're thinking about program design that ensures that outcome.
Perfect. Jennifer, I want to jump to you. Jennifer, of course, with the Illinois Solar for All program, this is a statewide program. You can speak to the entire state, but I hope you bring it down to the level that we can follow it in a more community level management. How do you deliver the substantial benefit to the end user in Illinois? We're talking about, in previous panels, maybe 5%, 10%. We know from research that most average consumers, market rate consumers, don't even feel a benefit until it hits a 20% discount. That's a minimal perception level. So Illinois has gone far beyond that.
Yeah, so Illinois was we were tasked with developing Illinois Solar for All to provide significant savings, or maybe tangible or meaningful savings was what was in the statute. And we developed Illinois Solar for All to deliver at least 50% savings for its participants. And so for community solar, what that means is, and it's only on the supply, but if the customer is getting $20 worth of credits, they can't be charged more than $10. So we wanted to make a program that actually is delivering significant savings that the customers are able to see on their bills as something that is making a big impact on their energy burden. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, how did you do that?
How do we do it? So we have, so Illinois Solar for All is incentives provided up front through REC contracts. So the Illinois Power Agency or the utilities, depending on what the funding source is, pay for 15 years of RECs up front. And so, the Illinois Solar for All REC incentives are greater than our market rate program. And with those additional incentives, the expectation is that those savings will be flowing through to the customer.
Can you guarantee or measure that they are, though? And this is
Mhm.
always the bugaboo. Can you make sure the intention is met?
So our first community solar projects that were approved 3 or 4 years ago now are just now coming online, probably within the last year. So we have not done the evaluation of looking at the bills yet, but that is part of our next evaluation.
Okay, cool.
So it'll be, it's part of the contracts that the customer signs. So they are supposed to be, they're shown what their savings rate is, and then we'll be going back and double checking that that's actually happening.
Good. Well, we'll look forward to those
Yeah.
results. Zoe, I wanted to make sure we spoke particularly to the sun situation. Sun, as we know, emphasizes residential rooftop installation. The Inflation Reduction Act, Inflation Reduction Act and other federal provisions don't necessarily preference or even mention residential rooftop, preferring to build on larger asset bases. Can you speak to whether or not you can leverage anything or much in the situation of direct rooftop installation from the current tranche of federal support?
Well, I think it's been very clear today, we're all on the edge of our seat, right? It's still not very clear. And so, you know, I would pause to be definitive. However, we have taken the opportunity during the open comment periods to at least, let a different way of doing this be possible by, I think, contributing very cogent and I think tangible, but more so transformative opportunity. So as someone who wears an equity hat for my organization, I've been fortunate in that within the field, and what brings many of us into this room today are the 4 energy equity principles. And so that's procedural, that's restorative, it's also distributional, and then also we recognize in understanding the burden that many of our communities feel. I think that as the IRA is now, and as Section 25 code is in that there is no mechanism there's no clear articulation for individuals who are not paying taxes or don't have a major tax burden to have direct receipt. And so the opportunity there for there to be a real distributive opportunity when thinking of this new energy system has possibly been missed. But again, not knowing exactly the final opportunity, we can't say. This distributive opportunity also is very much where Sun is unique in that the systems that we work to make accessible to our families are very much, ensuring that from day one, they are cash positive and that, they really are an instrument for, if not necessarily wealth building, depending on the location that they are, at least they can, they help reduce the energy burden, even if it's just a few dollars a month. It's just, again, it's also, it's helping also reduce, as we said earlier, when we define value, right, the dividend could also be health. That's immeasurable. The dividend could be, an improved quality, but then the other important dividend is connecting communities to resilience and the, I think the value of being able to have, transformative and then that some efficacy and capacity to change your community. And so I think that that's another component that we often forget in, this value add. Sometimes it's actually about helping galvanize a movement and really buttress, the grassroots capabilities for a community.
Yeah, more encompassing than the individual family seeing some amount of dollars come back on their energy bill.
Yes.
Much more encompassing than that.
And these LMI pilots that we hold act as a proxy for really community galvanization.
Absolutely. Charlie, I want to come back to you in terms of consumer protection. We talked a little bit about program design, and you mentioned a few points. The financial provisions, the consumer protection, some of the larger federal bills, and ongoing in all of our advocacy for low-income delivery of service. I know NCLC has been instrumental in promoting that and advocating that. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so one that I'll put in the category of consumer protection is to make sure the LIHEAP agencies that are going to be the partners are not overburdened. So you mentioned the fact LIHEAP, believe me, is significantly underfunded compared to the need. I'll give you an example of my state. My state has to process 160,000 applications where they find the resources to learn about community solar. That's usually not what's in the wheelhouse of the people who do it. I'd also flag privacy of information. This has come up a lot in the discussions we have with community folks, is we have to make sure any sharing of information is absolutely protected. Careful vetting of the developers. And one other one we're going to suggest, because it's the unknown unknowns. It's like, if there's going to be any complaints, let's make sure there's a central place that people can complain to so that we can fix things and see if there's any problem, as opposed to a one-off mistake somebody made. And one I did as a question from the floor, and several people have come up to me. We really have to figure out how community solar doesn't decrease your LIHEAP benefits or impact your utility allowances. Now, most of you are from states where LIHEAP pays your bills. Well, if your bills go down, did you just lose, for every dollar you got as a solar benefit, did you just lose it to a lower LIHEAP benefit? And I won't bore you with the complicated stuff that is utility allowances, but basically a housing authority assumes you have a certain size utility bill. They lower your rent so you can pay the utility bill, but you can have the exact same problem. If you've got a solar benefit, the housing authority could say, well, your utility costs just went down. We're going to lower your utility allowance and your rent goes up. We have to solve this problem because, again, if we're worried about equity, who are the poorest among the poorest, the people living in public housing across America? I think that covers all the, oh, well, one that you have mentioned, actually, you were asking Yesenia about is we have to verify that the savings are real, just so that we learn what happens. All kinds of things can happen with the sun and the equipment and the transmission of the power wherever it goes. So let's make sure we're delivering the benefits.
That's right. And I want to go back to Yesenia and Zoe and say, particularly to Charlie's point, when we provide some benefit, some public benefit to our struggling neighbors, do we then inadvertently take away their ability to receive another kind of benefit? For instance, generally, hey, you got an energy payment, so you don't get as many SNAP credits now, or, oh, your rent goes up because we know about.
Yeah, unfortunately, as Charlie was mentioning, that was a reality. I know that HUD, DOE, and others are trying to work around those rules so that it's clear that if you're now a community solar subscriber, if you have solar installed on your rooftop, those benefits are not affecting them because you're asking them to choose between clean energy, lower utility, but then increase their rent and take away their utility allowances. So you also have like that benefit cliffs, which is very real. And you're like, if your income goes up a little bit, you may, it may not be enough to cover that cliff. It may not be enough to cover what your benefits were covering. So, we have to make it as easy as possible for folks to keep the benefits they have, but also have access to clean energy. And I think that change of the rules, particularly by HHS, in addressing the utility allowances with HUD and LIHEAP, will make a big difference in making sure that folks can access clean energy while not losing those benefits that they depend on.
Yeah, and I know Illinois also cares about that and has taken pains to do that. And Zoe, I wanted to ask about specific projects and how it works in the residential rooftop if that comes up.
It does. Well, I'd say it's slightly different in that, many of the folks that we're working with, they are homeowners. However, they are what fall under this new way of understanding families that the United Way has come up, and some of you may be familiar. It's an acronym called ALICE, and it's asset limited, income constrained, and employed. I think that really captures the experience. So where they might necessarily be recipients of a lot of economic benefits through, like SNAP, they are very much income constrained. Yeah. And so that really does, so they don't always qualify. And so thinking of the prior panels today, right, there's this, where they are adversely impacted is that, going from interest to participate in a pilot to actually being able to go to switch. Sometimes it could be 24 months. And so when we think of the economic trend curve for these families, it's a W. They have feast, they have famine. And so from the time of when they apply to maybe they actually get qualified, they may not, and sometimes the incentives have timed out, and so they've lost that opportunity, or maybe they had the money, but then the opportunity. So it's just minding the gaps in between readiness and availability of pilots or projects and financing. And so I think that that's the nuance, in that it's not always just about the fact that they might get the benefits cliff, but then there's also, let's not let them be vulnerable to, I guess, the technical assistance or our programming cliff, which is, you know, a beast of its own.
Yes. Charlie, I see you like jumping up in your seat.
I just wanted to say that HUD is trying and is well-intentioned, but I've spoken to several people. The guidance needs to be ridiculously clear. There's 3,000 or so housing authorities in America, and their basic job is to collect the rent and keep the building operating. We need really clear guidance that makes sure that the people who get the solar benefit don't lose out.
For sure, for sure. Now, in Illinois, there's so many different kinds of communities and delivery systems. How does the Solar for All program try to anticipate these various constraints to win, to deliver the benefit that you have planned into that system?
Well, one thing I would hold up for that was our program administrator, Elevate, has a very hands-on approach to their approved vendor management. And so their team is really working very closely with the developers to troubleshoot issues that are coming up with their projects along the way, and helping them guide them through the process, because it is a lot of paperwork, and there's a lot of things that we are checking to make sure that it's a quality system that's serving the customers. So I think that's one big thing that I think is a benefit, is actually providing the help to the developers. So they're not just developing in a vacuum, but you know, they're also getting some guidance from the program. And then we also have, with the new legislation a year ago, we were given an additional focus on supporting small and emerging businesses. So that's something that we are looking at to provide even better resources and one-on-one support for those kinds of developers, so that they can get into the Illinois market as it's growing, and we can be serving, you know, not just the residents, but we're also serving businesses that are growing.
Fantastic. Okay, audience participation time. I want you to all raise your hands in the air and shake. This will prepare you to ask questions. So if you have a question, raise one hand in the air and shake it, and I'll try to see you through the glaring lights and call on you. We have just a few minutes for questions. Hand, yes. And I think someone will dash over to you with a microphone. Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Duffy, also from the Illinois Power Agency. So Jen, you do not have to answer my question. I was really curious about for So and Yesenia, for the projects that you develop where people are looking to own their systems. Illinois now is looking to increase the percentage of projects in our program where the customer owns the system. And I'm just curious, kind of what barriers you guys have run into, or lessons you've learned in working on projects where there is community ownership, and like what other programs and companies might learn from that.
I can start and pass it on to you, but it's important to start with education. You know, I think there's this misconception that especially low to moderate income communities or frontline communities, they're not interested in clean energy. They don't have the time for that. And we find that it's complete opposite. They're the ones that are suffering the most and bearing the burden for climate change. And they do understand the benefits of clean energy and how that can change their communities. It's financing those projects that has been a challenge. Like I said, when our Boston cap decided we want to own this project, we're like, how are we doing this without a tax equity flip? You know, thankfully the IRA passed, but education, that financing structure are key. Building that trust with the community so that they are interested in signing up for the project, especially community solar. You said these projects can take years from the time we're talking about them till you're actually a subscriber and seeing benefits. When do you sign up those low income families? Because they're going to think, I've been on this list for 6 months. I'm still not seeing any reduction on my bill. This is not true. And they're going to start talking to their neighbors and their friends about this is a scam, this is not real. So we have to balance that in approaching the communities. But I think if you build that trust with the community, if you educate them on what the project is, what the timeline is, then it's going to be a lot easier to enroll them and subscribe them into this model.
So did you want to answer that as well?
And I think something that has come up frequently today is that income verification piece, and that, filling out paperwork over and over in this time where data sensitivities are, we're also vulnerable is a big piece. Again, there's the bureaucratic red tape in that maybe you qualified when you're in this census tract, and then and there may be a move. And also when it comes to the income verification, it's being able to maybe maintain your status once qualifying. Could you possibly retain that qualifying status for much longer than maybe one tax year? And so that's an opportunity and a proposal. It's something that we suggested even in our comments to the Treasury. And so understanding that you shouldn't have to necessarily lose out of an opportunity because of processing time.
Other question?
So we have a question from Zoom that's a nice
Oh,
follow-up
okay.
to one of the answers I think that one of the panelists raised. So what are some strategies that are working for building that trust, especially among LMI subscribers with a distrust of energy products that community solar can save them money in Israel?
Like I said, education is key, and just really looking at the gatekeepers. Every community has those gatekeepers, has those trusted folks. And it is a lot easier to go through them and work with them and gain that community trust than trying to venture on your own. But it has to be genuine and it has to be legitimate, or the community will see right through it.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'll build on that. Illinois Solar for All has up to 5% of its funding that can be used for grassroots education efforts. And historically, we've done that with grassroots education campaigns done by local neighborhood agencies. And these are hyper-local groups and nonprofits that have that trust already. And so they are educating their communities and their neighbors about solar, community solar, and the Illinois Solar for All opportunities that are in their communities. And so having those grassroots educator partners has been really important for us.
Yeah, and I would add, don't expect this to be quick. I mean, we have hundreds of years of oppression and systemic isms in this country. And it's not going to be solved in one meeting with the local pastor and your community solar is going to go in. Please allow the time.
Yeah, and we're seeing that with our grassroots educators too. Our contracts are for 1 year, but we're hearing from them that it takes a while to get that foothold of trust with solar that's not been even on the radar of the communities that we're trying to reach.
Right. I think we have time for one more question. I saw a hand over here.
Hi. Yeah, I really appreciated what you all said about the economic benefits and really removing people, I guess, not allowing people to take advantage of LIHEAP and think about SNAP and sort of bumping them out of the benefits that they're already getting from the government. I was really curious if through your work in community engagement, whether or not you've heard directly from the community about other ways they'd like that wealth or some of those gains to be reflected. So whether it's a college fund or whether it's I don't know, new library or something. I'm just curious if you've dealt with that at all. Ask that question.
Was the question whether there were other things impacted? I didn't.
Beyond the individual savings on a bill.
Yeah.
What other benefits would the community appreciate, or have we heard that the community appreciates? Is that your question?
Is there a way to I'm thinking about finding a way to have your cake and eat it too. So not only having the solar on your roof, but not being knocked out of the LIHEAP like not losing your light heat abilities, not losing your like
Other benefits.
other benefits.
Right.
Well, the ones I know about are LIHEAP and utility allowances. I suppose other programs could count a solar benefit as income. I hope they don't. So the only two I know about that have been directly impacted are, well, LIHEAP potentially, utility allowances has actually happened. It's been a big problem. I don't know of any others where it's been a problem. I don't know if I answered your question. I wasn't
Oh, I
hearing
think the
so well.
community also benefits from community level, as Zoe was saying, community level
Engagement.
engagement, resiliency centers that combine solar and storage as well as some offtake.
And if I can add, I know that our group in Boston, that is a question that is at the front of their community benefits plan, is how do we build this project? Who gets the benefit from the subscription? And they're looking at this as a generational wealth building mechanism.
Yeah.
Not just about reducing their energy bills, but how can they build this project in a way that leads to generational wealth building? So they are thinking beyond the savings on the bill. Where do we site it? Who builds it? How do we split the benefits with the community? All of those are questions so that we can lead to a generational wealth building.
Yeah. I want to thank you all. We don't want to go too much over our time. We're a little over our time. I do want to encourage all of you here to come to this panel after the session or through email. I think each of the panelists' contact information is in the program from DOE. I also want to encourage you to look forward later this spring to the National Community Solar Partnership and DOE releasing a new tool that I think will be tremendously helpful for this body in particular. The community, let me make sure I get the title right.
The Community Solar Subscription Tool.
There you go. Low income community solar subscription tool, which is not out quite yet, but will be available as a free public resource in addition to all the other tremendous resources developed by DOE and its labs for our use to continue delivering these great benefits to all the families and the neighbors we care about. So look for the low income community solar subscription tool later this spring. And I hope one of the DOE folks will say where you can find that. I think somewhere in the National Community Solar Partnership, there'll be an announcement for sure. So look for that, use it, spread it around and continue delivering the benefit and seeking the innovations that enable us to expand in a creative way, both clean energy and the wealth building opportunity, jobs, income, other benefits for our communities that we so badly need and so compassionately care to share. Thanks a bunch.